All right, so picture this. It's December 26th, 2025.
The day after Christmas.
Exactly. You're probably, still in a food coma from the holidays, scrolling on your phone, looking for something interesting.
And the news cycle is completely dead.
It's dead quiet, and then all of a sudden, boom, a press release drops out of Jerusalem. And it's the kind of thing that makes every foreign policy nerd just sit up and spill their coffee.
Right.
Israel officially recognizes Somaliland as a sovereign state.
And at first, it sounds like such a minor blip, doesn't it? I mean, most people hear Somaliland, and they probably just think it's a typo for Somalia.
Exactly. I think for the average person, it barely registers. But then you look at the reaction in, the diplomatic world, and it was not quiet. It was a wildfire.
Oh, absolutely. Statements flying, ambassadors scrambling,
Yeah.
a lot of very frantic phone calls.
So the mission for this deep dive today isn't just about a flag on a map or a new seat at the UN. We're going to dig into why this specific recognition matters so much. We're unpacking a really fascinating analysis by Sephora Fried titled, Why the U.S. and its Allies Should Follow Israel's Lead and Recognize Somaliland.
And this article, it's a heavy hitter. Fried isn't just arguing for, fairness or being nice. She's making the case that the West is suffering from a massive case of what she calls diplomatic fiction.
Diplomatic fiction.
Yeah. We're looking at a state that technically doesn't exist, according to the UN, but it functions better than the one the world pretends does exist.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe more importantly, how this one strip of land could be the key to securing the Red Sea.
It really is a story of stability versus chaos and reality versus denial. But before we get into all the geopolitics, the big chess moves, I think we need to clear something up.
Okay.
When you hear Somaliland, the immediate assumption is, okay, this is just a rebellious province of Somalia trying to break away. Is that right?
That is the common narrative.
Yeah.
It's what you'll see in most headlines. But the source makes it really clear that this is a huge misconception. If you look at the history, this isn't a secession. It's a divorce. And not just any divorce. It's the end of a very short, very bad marriage that happened over 60 years ago.
A bad marriage. Okay, let's unpack that history, because I think most people just assume that line on the map has always been there.
Not at all. We have to go back to the colonial era. Somaliland and Somalia were never the same country.
Right.
Somaliland was a British protectorate, British Somaliland. Somalia, the larger area to the south, was an Italian territory.
So, completely different administrations.
Totally distinct. Different languages of administration, different legal systems, different borders. They were as different as, say, Kenya and Tanzania.
Two separate entities from the very start.
Completely. And here's the fact that always surprises people, and it's crucial to Fried's argument. Somaliland actually gained its independence first.
Oh, really?
Yep. In June 1960, the British lowered the Union Jack, and Somaliland became a fully sovereign state. It was recognized by dozens of countries, including the United States.
Wait, so they were already their own independent country, so how did they end up attached to Somalia?
They chose to. Just 5 days after their independence, they voluntarily united with the former Italian territory to the south.
God.
It was this intense, very emotional Pan-African dream of creating a greater Somalia. The idea was to unite all Somali people in the Horn of Africa under one flag.
It sounds like a romantic gesture that went very, very wrong.
That's exactly what it was. Fried points out that legally, the union was a mess from day one. She calls it fundamentally defective.
How is it defective?
The two sides never properly ratified the Act of Union. It was just two different colonial systems mashed together without any shared foundation. It's like trying to merge a Mac and a PC in 1960. It just doesn't work.
And I'm guessing the honeymoon period didn't last very long.
It barely lasted a minute.
Mm.
The South, Mogadishu, dominated everything. They marginalized the Northern Isaac clans, who were the majority population in Somaliland, and that oppression got worse and worse, until it culminated in the dictatorship of Siad Barre. In the late 80s, he launched a brutal war against the people of Somaliland.
And we're not talking about just political disagreements here.
No, not at all. We're talking about the aerial bombardment of Hargeisa, the capital of Somaliland. The government was literally bombing its own citizens.
Which brings us to 1991. The entire Somali state just collapses into anarchy.
Total collapse. The central government falls, civil war erupts, the state basically vanishes. And in the middle of all that chaos, Somaliland didn't technically secede.
Right.
They dissolved the union. They effectively said, this experiment has failed catastrophically. We are reverting to our status as of June 1960.
That is a really powerful distinction. They're not asking to be created out of thin air.
No.
They're asking to be acknowledged as the thing they were before the union.
Precisely. And there's a specific historical hook here with Israel that the source mentions, which I found fascinating. Back in the late 80s, when the Barr regime was committing these atrocities, the world was largely looking away.
But not Israel.
But Israel was one of the few nations alerting the UN about what was happening.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and those warnings were ignored at the time, but it forged a bond. So this recognition we're talking about in 2025, it's not coming out of the blue. It's the culmination of decades of quiet cooperation, medical aid, humanitarian support that kept going, even when Somaliland was diplomatically invisible.
That context really changes how you see the whole thing. It's not just a random strategic play. There's a real history there.
A long history.
So let's fast forward. It's been roughly 35 years since that split in 91. If I were to travel to Mogadishu today and then fly north to Hargeisa, what's the difference on the ground?
Oh, it's night and day. It's a difference between a failed state and a functioning one. I mean, since 1991, the international community, the UN, the US, the EU, has poured billions of dollars into Mogadishu.
Billions with a B.
Billions. Massive institutional support, military training, financial aid, peacekeepers. And what's the result, according to Fried? Chronic instability. Still. You have civil war, endemic corruption, piracy threatening global shipping, and of course the entrenched presence of Islamist groups like Al-Shabaab. It's a cycle of dependency and violence.
And then you have Somaliland. They didn't get the billions. They didn't get the peacekeepers.
And Fried argues that might be exactly why they succeeded.
Because no one was there to help.
Exactly. Because nobody helped them. They had to rely on what she calls endogenous mechanisms.
Endogenous mechanisms. That sounds very academic. What does that mean in real life?
It means they fixed it themselves, from the inside out. They didn't have Western consultants flying in to write a constitution. They literally sat under acacia trees for months. Clan elders, politicians, regular citizens, they held these massive conferences, like the one in Barama, and they hammered out compromises. They figured out how to integrate their traditional clan structures with a modern democratic system.
So it wasn't imposed from the top down. It grew from the roots up?
Precisely. And the stats back it up. They have their own currency. They issue their own passports. They have a police force that actually polices. And, maybe most importantly, they have regular elections with peaceful transfers of power.
Which is rare in the region.
Very rare. The source calls Somaliland a durable, successful state in all but official title.
Now, is it a paradise? Is it perfect?
No, and the article is honest about that. It faces challenges, especially in its eastern regions where clan dynamics can get pretty complicated. But compared to the chaos in the south, it's a beacon of stability.
Okay, so we've established Somaliland is a democratic, stable friend in a very, very rough neighborhood. But here's the so what question. Why does this matter to the rest of the world? Why should you, listening right now, care about this?
Because geography is destiny. If you open a map and you zoom in on Somaliland, look where it sits. It's right on the south shore of the Gulf of Aden. It directly overlooks the approach to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait.
Which, for anyone who doesn't memorize shipping lanes, that's the tiny pinch point between Africa and the Arabian Peninsula.
It is arguably the most critical choke point in the world right now. It connects the Indian Ocean to the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, and the Mediterranean.
So a huge chunk of global trade.
A massive percentage of the entire world's trade flows through that little strip of water. Energy, food, everything you buy online, it all goes through there.
And as we've seen very recently, that makes it incredibly vulnerable.
Exactly. We saw this with the Houthi strikes from Yemen. The source really emphasizes that when the U.S. and its allies intervened there, it wasn't just about protecting Israel. It was about preventing the paralysis of international commerce.
Right.
If that strait closes, the global economy has a heart attack. Prices for everything skyrocket. Supply chains break. It affects everyone.
Okay, so enter Somaliland. They have this major asset, the port of Berbera.
Yes. The UAE has invested heavily to modernize it. It's a deep-water port. And the source argues it could be an essential foothold for Western-aligned powers.
A foothold against who?
Well, think about the players on this chessboard. You have Iran backing the Houthis in Yemen, causing chaos. You have Qatar with its own agenda. You have Turkey expanding its influence in Somalia proper.
And Somaliland offers a way to balance all of that out.
Exactly. For Israel, recognizing Somaliland is a strategic masterstroke. It gives them what the article calls strategic depth.
Eyes and ears on the Red
It
Sea.
gives them eyes and ears on that corridor without needing to build a massive controversial military base. It helps them monitor the Houthis who, you have to remember, have declared war on Israel.
And it also seems like a move to counter Turkey, right? The
Mhm.
source mentions Israel strengthening ties with Greece and Cyprus, and this feels like it fits right into that puzzle.
It does. Turkey has been very active in the Horn of Africa. By aligning with Somaliland, Israel, and by extension the West, can create a counterweight to that expansionism. This is classic balance of power politics.
So let me just recap. Somaliland is stable, it's democratic, it's pro-Western, it actively opposes political Islam,
Mm-hmm.
and it is sitting on arguably the most important shipping lane in the world. This sounds like the absolute dream partner for the US and for NATO. Why on earth is everyone giving them the cold shoulder?
That is the Western dilemma the article gets into. The source calls it a commitment to diplomatic fiction.
Mm-hmm.
The West is so committed to the idea of a unified Somalia, a thing that hasn't existed in reality for 35 years, that they refuse to acknowledge the facts on the ground.
It's like they're prioritizing the map on the wall over the reality outside the window.
And there's a glaring double standard here when it comes to international law. The source brings up the Montevideo Convention of 1933.
The legal test for statehood.
Right, it's the standard. To be
Yeah.
a state, you need four things: a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and the capacity to have relations with other states
And Somaliland checks all those boxes.
for over 3 decades. But here is where the hypocrisy comes in. The source points out that several European countries are pushing to recognize a Palestinian state.
Okay.
Now, setting aside the politics of that for a moment, just look at the legal argument. The Palestinian territories currently struggle to meet those specific Montevideo criteria control of territory, a single unified government.
Right.
Yet there's a huge push to recognize them. Meanwhile, Somaliland meets every single one of those criteria with flying colors and gets completely ignored.
So international law becomes, as the source says, an arbitrary instrument. You use it when it's convenient.
Exactly. And that inconsistency, it really damages Western credibility. If you claim to support democracy and stability, but you ignore the one place in the Horn of Africa that actually built a democracy, people start to wonder what your values actually are.
But surely there has to be a reason for the hesitation. I mean, it can't just be stubbornness. What are the actual risks? What is the West so afraid of?
There are valid fears, and we shouldn't just dismiss them. The biggest one is the African Union's stance on territorial integrity. The fear is if you recognize Somaliland, you open Pandora's box.
The domino effect.
Right. Suddenly, every separatist movement in Africa, and there are many, will say, hey, what about us? They worry it will destabilize the whole continent.
What else?
There's also the fear of a violent reaction from Somalia. Mogadishu still considers Somaliland part of its territory. Recognition could spark a war, or, jihadist groups could use it as a recruiting tool, claiming that the West is trying to divide a Muslim nation.
Okay, those sound like pretty serious risks, but the author doesn't seem to buy it.
No, Fried argues these fears are way overstated. She calls them dire predictions of the second-order effects. We've heard this song and dance before. Remember when the U.S. moved its embassy to Jerusalem?
Everyone predicted World War III.
Or when Qasem Soleimani was killed? Everyone predicted a massive regional war.
And it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. The region absorbed the shock and it moved on. The source argues that Somaliland is already independent. Formalizing it is just catching up to reality.
And the Pandora's box argument.
She points to Kosovo and South Sudan. We have recognized new states before without the whole world falling apart.
So the argument is that the West is basically paralyzed by a fear of things that might happen, and in the meantime, it's missing a huge opportunity that's staring them right in the face.
A massive opportunity. And this is where the U.S. specifically needs to wake up, according to the source. The U.S. currently relies almost entirely on Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. That's our only permanent military base in Africa.
And Djibouti's getting a little crowded, isn't it? China has a base there now, too.
They do. We're basically sharing a bunk bed with our biggest strategic rival. We are completely dependent on a single host country.
So Somaliland offers diversification.
It's a strategic insurance policy. It gives the U.S. options. If things ever go south in Djibouti, having a partner right next door in Somaliland is critical.
And there's the ideological battle, too.
Right. We're seeing networks linked to the Muslim Brotherhood in Iran that are trying to destabilize Europe and the Middle East. The source argues that recognizing Somaliland is a way to fight back. It helps build a robust anti-Islamist coalition.
It's proactive.
It sends a signal that the West is willing to support moderate democratic governance in the Muslim world. It's not just about defense. It's about taking the strategic initiative for once.
It's a really compelling case. You have a partner who is ready and willing to help fight piracy, fight terrorism, secure global trade, and they're basically just knocking on the door asking to be let in.
And by keeping that door locked, the West might be hurting itself more than anyone else. Washington loves strategic ambiguity, but in this case, ambiguity might just look like weakness.
So, to sum it all up, we have a functioning state. It checks every single box the West claims to care about. It sits on a critical global shipping lane, and yet, until Israel broke the ice in our scenario, it was virtually invisible diplomatically.
It forces you to ask a really hard question. Is the West sticking to diplomatic tradition at the cost of its own strategic credibility? We're trying to solve 21st century problems. Houthi missiles, fragile supply chains, transnational terrorism, using a map from 1960.
That's the tension right there, isn't it? So here's the thought I want to leave everyone with. If the U.S. and Europe are desperately looking for partners to secure the Red Sea and fight extremism, are they ignoring the most obvious allies simply because they're afraid of redrawing a line on a map that hasn't reflected reality for 35 years?
That is the question. And as the source concludes, it's not really about whether recognizing Somaliland is legitimate. The facts on the ground speak for themselves. The real question is how much longer can we afford to look the other way?
Something to think about next time you see a map of the Horn of Africa. The lines on the paper might not be telling you the whole story. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.